Hello, my name is John Brink and we are podcasting on the Brink from beautiful northern British Columbia, Prince George, the capital of northern British Columbia, at least in my mind. And northern BC and BC, period, in the world is an amazing, amazing province. For all of those that are watching us from around the world, if you plan a visit, go to Canada. If you go to Canada, come to BC in particular, and do not forget, come to northern BC. It is amazing. We have a special guest today, and her name is Kyndra Farrell. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, you're a very unique person because you're still very young. Can I say how old you are?
Yeah, absolutely. 24.
Yeah, at 24, you are, when I first got to know about you and kind of watched you being on some of the shows and doing some of the things that you do, and obviously being very entrepreneurial minded myself from the time that I was young, I see in you a young entrepreneur extraordinary by birth already, moving into thinking entrepreneurial. And so we're going to talk about that. So we want to know a little bit more about you for the benefit of our guest. So tell us a little bit about, are you from the area, the region, and what is your background?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in northern BC. I've been here my whole life.
Okay.
I was raised in Fraser Lake, so about an hour and a half from Prince George.
Yeah, just on this side, on the other side of Vanderhoof.
Yes,
Yeah.
really small community.
Yeah.
So
How many? 6,000?
yeah, I don't even think it's that many.
Yeah.
I know that within the community, it's probably less than 1,000, and
Yeah.
then surrounding area probably bumps that up to 2,500, maybe 3,000.
Right.
So really small school.
Yeah.
My grad class was 22 kids.
Yeah.
So not very big at all.
No.
And then in 2018, I moved to Prince George to go to school, and I've been here working and doing my schooling ever since.
CNC,
Yep, I started off at CNC in their
College of New Caledonia.
yeah,
Yeah.
in my business management diploma.
Yeah.
And then once I finished that, I transferred over to the university to complete my undergraduate in
University of Northern British Columbia.
Yeah.
I'm always proud about mentioning it. That's been here for a little more than 30 years, relatively new. The best small university in all of Canada,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
great spot.
Okay, so that's where you want then. And then what did you take there?
Well, I'm actually still finishing my degree.
Okay, which degree?
It's my undergraduate in business commerce.
Okay,
Yeah. So I would say roughly in my 4th year right now.
okay.
I do that between full-time work and then also running my businesses and a number of other things. So
You're
takes
as
a little
busy
longer.
as I am, or busier.
I don't know, maybe close.
Yeah. So, and so you mentioned already, let's talk a little bit more about you. And so you're still doing that, you're in your 4th year. So does that mean you're going to be graduating next year?
In a perfect world, yes.
Yeah.
But with how busy I am with my company.
So you're balancing,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, trying to do a little bit of both. And so
The next year or two.
yeah, I would say
you would
safely.
have then a bachelor's of commerce.
Yes, yeah.
Right, so which is amazing, really.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and especially if you consider at the College of New Caledonia, probably the largest college in all of northern British Columbia, right? And one of the most prominent ones probably in BC, and it has all kinds of satellites in all the communities.
Yeah.
It has them in Vanderhoof, and that means Fraser Lake as well, because Fraser Lake is about 10-15 minutes from Vanderhoof.
Yeah, 20, 25 at most.
Yeah,
Not
very
very long.
close, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you're doing in the next year or two. And the amazing thing about you that I see, you've been always entrepreneurial. You have this So do I. I recognize that. I'm always looking for opportunity. And if I see situations happening, I put it on my focal lens of, okay, how does it work? How does it fit? What opportunities are there? That kind of an approach. Do you do that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of what started my second company. So exactly the same thing. I saw something that wasn't really happening in Prince George and thought, okay, well, let's make it happen. So yeah.
Yeah, and that was very successful and was recognized provincial. I'm not going to tell them right away what it is. Let's talk about, that was your second company.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your first company. And did that have something to do with your fiancé? That
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you know that you guys were looking at an opportunity, a potential business opportunity, and you created what?
Well, I had just recently graduated from CNC. I was
Yeah.
kind of in the works even prior to that.
Yeah.
My fiance, he is a journeyman red seal millwright. So he's got several years of experience working in and around trades. And so he wanted to start his own company and he just didn't know kind of where to start. So we teamed up and partnered together to create True North Millwright Services.
Yeah.
That is our millwrighting outfit that we've been operating for the last couple of years.
Right.
Yeah.
And it is called?
True North Millwright Services.
So it specializes in maintenance, or does it specialize in services to, these days it is so important in millwright, for those that are watching, this region is very dominant in terms of being lumber producers. There are a whole big number of sawmills and pulp mills and value-added plants and all of those things are all in the region.
Yep.
And some of them are big companies. He worked for them in the millwrighting side of things.
Yeah.
And then what is happening now is that because mills are very, very delicate, very sensitive to downtime, so do preventive maintenance and other things related to that are extremely important. And a lot of operations now are hiring outside, or potentially hiring outside expertise to do parts of that on a contract or a fee-for-service basis. Is that where the opportunity lay?
Yeah, well, since we've started, we knew that there was a labor shortage for tradesmen.
Yeah.
And so within the province, there's so few qualified people, and especially,
huge problem.
Yes, absolutely. And so knowing that made it a lot easier to take that jump and that risk. And so we started it up, and for the first 6 months, he was basically running by himself, subcontracting to other larger companies. And then people really started to see the value in our service and the quality of work that he was providing. And then we started getting contracts with bigger companies like West Fraser and Canfor.
For maintenance?
Yes.
Yeah. And where did he get his training?
His training was also done at CNC. He's all 4 years.
Okay, and what did he train for at CNC?
I think his first year was a couple different, like beginning first year millwrighting, and then I think he.
What I'm trying to do is kind of pinning it down because there's a building there that has that I'm fairly familiar with.
Yeah. Well, in his first year, I was millwrighting, welding, and then I think machining. And then every year after that, it was millwrighting specifically.
Yeah. The one building I'm referring to is the John A. Brink Trades and Technology Center.
I'm sure he's worked in there a little bit.
And that comes precisely to the point that you were making earlier, because when I started that or helped them getting off the ground, is what I said during my presentation, must have been 25, 30 years ago now, that the biggest challenge will be for entrepreneurship and developing and attracting capital investment in companies, not only forest industry, but all the natural resources that we have here. Is the biggest deterrent would be not access to fiber or resources, not access to market, not access to road or rail or transportation, not access to available capital, not access to entrepreneurship. The deterrent would be access to a skilled workforce. Is still was then the biggest problem. And I've been in business with my companies, the Brink Group. We have about 10 different companies, but mostly lumber, but also other ones, interior warehousing and logistics, as well as real estate, residential, commercial, and industrial. Our biggest problem from the day that I started my companies has been always a skilled workforce. Was then 50 years ago, still is today.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a big issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but that where there's an issue or...
Well, that's where the opportunities
Yeah,
are,
exactly.
right? Okay, so I'll just let you continue with your fiancé. So he was starting to do that first on his own.
Yeah, and then starting with bigger companies, the West Frasers, the Canfors,
Right.
Northwest Wood Treaters, and then so we started getting our own accounts in those places
Right.
and no longer had to subcontract. And so then we started building our workforce, and Matt's experience in the industry up until this point made him a lot of friendships with very skilled individuals who had strong work ethic and were the perfect kind of people to have on our team. And we were fortunate enough to bring on a couple of those guys, and from there we've continued to build and build and build. And right now I think we've got about 17 employees on our sheet, and some of them work full time with us, others it's more on call work, but
Right.
we've got a lot of really good guys that are within the area.
It's huge opportunity, right?
Huge.
So is there a name for the company?
Yeah, it's True North Millwright Services.
True North Millwright Services, and there's a website.
Yeah, we've got our own website and everything, and yeah, it's got done as soon as we started. That was one of the important things that I wanted, was a website. So
Yeah. So when did you start the company, or you guys started it?
I think we're at about 2.5 years with that
Yeah.
right now. So grew very quickly in a short amount of time.
So by the time you started it, you were 21.
Yeah, 21. Yeah, that was my first.
Can you imagine? But I think what is interesting, in particular, kind of going through the details here, how as people are watching us, and a lot of them are young people, but also are people from around the world that watching our podcast. And and entrepreneurship is always something that people aspire to. I wonder how can you start something like that? What steps do you have to take about how do you go from here and how do you go forward? And it also refers to part of my own history. When I came to Prince George in July of 1965, I was 24 years old. I couldn't speak the language. I didn't have a job. I didn't know a soul. And I had a suitcase with 3 books in it, one set of clothes, and and then I had in my pocket exactly $25.47. I counted it about 3 times. But I had a dream. I was going to build a lumber mill. The other thing that I said is foundation to me and all the things that I do. Just show it to my guest again. I showed it several times because I believe it's important. Not so much hurrah, hurrah, John, but for others that are watching and aspiring to dreams and wanting to, move forward and following dreams, is that everything is possible, but you have to have attitude. I avoid the negative. Passion. Find something that you love to do. And then work ethic, is critically important. What follows is success.
Absolutely.
So when I wrote the book about it, it's this one here, actually, Against All Odds. And, and all odds is basically, that I was born in November the 1st, 1940. Makes me 82 and a half. I count the halves now because I'm getting close to the end. No, I'm just joking, but I do. So, and Holland, and we were liberated by the Canadians, April the 12th, 1945. and I was about 4.5 years old, and in that area. And it made such an impression on me that I always knew from that point forward, I wanted to go to Canada, the land of my heroes. And I always knew that's where I belonged. I was trying to go when I was 17. My parents wouldn't let me. And then I was drafted into the Air Force in Holland for 2 years. Was in Special Forces, actually, amazingly. But, and then after that, worked in the forest industry. My dad managed a small lumber mill. That was my dream, the forest industry. I loved lumber. I was trained as a furniture maker. And then my studies were not too successful. I failed grade 3. Anybody that failed grade 3?
My grandma, actually.
Oh my God, can you believe it? I love it. And then I failed grade 7 3 times.
Oh wow. I don't think she did that.
No. So, and then he said, what are we going to do with this, guys? Love my parents, they're beautiful people. And people said, well, maybe he has to go to the school of the mentally challenged, people.
Yeah.
And fortunately, they didn't do that. Instead, what they did is they said, well, that I loved furniture and furniture making. So they sent me to a furniture factory, and then at nights I took courses becoming a furniture maker.
Wow, quite the story.
And then what happened is then I still wanted to go to Canada. So then when I came back out of the Air Force, I was fairly successful already in the lumber industry in Holland, even with my limited formal education, but then I decided to go to Canada, and my second dream was to build my own lumber mill. But I wanted to start from the bottom, with nothing. And because, although I was a happy-go-lucky fella, I always felt I had failed compared to all the other people, and I it always troubled me. And I felt I had to start all over from new, with no money, and that's why I came here. When I knew I wanted to go to BC, that's where the timber is. Then when I came by train to Vancouver, fortunately, I went to the immigration department. There was a German fellow, I could speak some German. I told him what I wanted to do. He said, Prince George. They're building sawmills there. Go to Prince George, 1965. It's a boom town. Anyway, come back to the book, is that after doing that, and this tells the whole story, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and all the challenges along the way that I had, I always knew I wanted to write a book about it. Mm-hmm. And so the book, it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, and trying again and doing it again, and then about 5 years ago, I knew if I didn't do it now, it would never happen. So then I made the commitment to write this, an autobiography, against all odds. It's not hurrah, hurrah, John. It's about in spite of it all. So that being born during the war years, being affected by PTSD, seeing far too many things we shouldn't have seen. My dad was drafted by the Dutch army, and they didn't know he was dead alive for 5 years. So she had 3 little kids trying to stay alive among with everybody else. So it was pretty tough, So that's kind of what I did. And then I'm going to talk about the other book a little bit too. Let me mention this one a little bit here, Bobby. And I felt I failed. I knew I was very good at doing something. I was very good at math, even with all the failing. And I've always been a good writer. So then I found this book. I went into the bookstore and I opened the book in the bookstore. The name was Driven to Distraction. And it's kind of funny that I mentioned the book, because I mentioned it several times, because all of a sudden I looked at it and it said ADHD, and I started reading about it. I said, oh my God, that's me. I lost the book for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I just found it this weekend. I should have taken it with me, because I talk about it a lot right now. Yeah. So I found it back, the book, and well worn out, and and still written in Dutch in it. Now I finally know who I am, because I was ashamed of it, right? So, anyway, talking a little bit more about that and a little bit later in that about the book writing. So the book that I'm writing is now finished, actually just today. The final steps are done. It is now what they call print ready. So where we do our own publishing, where we send the print ready version to our printers in Winnipeg, and they just put it in a machine, it spits it all out. It will be here first week in July.
Exciting.
What is the title? Always a challenge, because the title is so critically important, because it sends a message like that does, and like the other one does. It comes down to the discussion that we are having. Finding your passion, living the dream, because the one follows the other. I know so many people that either say, I don't know what to do, or I know people that are already middle-aged and somewhere and are married, have children and all the other things, and say, I hate my job. I say, if you do, change, because it will affect your whole life and everybody around you. And it is so critical. And and that does not mean, if you look at this book here, Against All Odds, I've had all kinds of challenges. If you ask me today, you already know the answer, is that, did you follow your passion? Yes, I did. And are you, John, living the dream? Absolutely no question about it. With all the challenges, I wouldn't do it any other way. But what I did do, by all the falling down, standing up, and all the challenges along the way that you've had and will have as you go forward and are prepared for already, I know that, that then, makes you even stronger. And so that is the message that I'm sending against all odds. And then the other part that, that what is important for me, that born during the war years, being affected by PTSD that stays with you for the rest of your life, in a way, and the inner child, the fear of losing a critical parent. I got counseling for that when I was in my late 50s, very emotional, and then finding out when I was 57 that I have ADHD, and and then it took me 5 years to even talk to my doctor about it, and the doctor delivered my daughters, and walking into the doc's office one day, and he said, "Hey, John, why are you here?" I said, "I think I got ADHD." And so we looked at it together, and yeah, I do, and then feeling I had to write a book about it. I call it a superpower, but there was a lot of stigma attached to it. So when I was 67, I saw the book that I should have taken with me, actually, but I found it back now. And then I felt it took me 5 years to get diagnosed by my doc. And then it probably took me, I was 62, so it probably took me 15 years before I even talked about it really publicly. And I have for the last 5, 6, 7 years. I talk about it more openly, and then I felt I have an obligation to write about it. And that's what I did in this book, very popular actually around the world, and becoming increasingly more popular. And I call it a superpower, no question about it. And there's virtually not a day, Kyndra, that goes by that I don't meet somebody or hear from somebody and saying, yeah, I have it too, and so and what is happening now is that for everybody that say, will I encounter it if I don't have it? Yes, you will. because it will be somewhere in your family circle, it will be among your friends, it likely will be for sure in the place you work, and it will be in the world that you interact with. To understand it is very important because that they tend to be people with ADHD a little bit different, and but they have huge opportunity. A lot of the entrepreneurs extraordinaire ADHD, because it allows them, like me, I can do 20 things all at the same time. That's what I do. So, and that's why I'm going to get you a copy of this. So I talk about that is that saying that entrepreneurship is so unique as it is with you at a very early age, but it's already starts showing up thinking entrepreneurship, especially when you're aware of it, like in your case, because it's a gift that you have, or the ability of approaching issues of interest in a different way and looking at it as opportunities. And I still now, at nearly 83, are still doing that on a daily basis. I'm working on one project right now, which I believe has huge potential, that I'm still incorporating the underlying incorporations in terms of name, platform, and the whole business plan. That's on one project that I'm working on. Then the other one, we have about 5, 6, 7, 8 different companies, challenges in the forest industry, but at the same time we will double the size of our companies. We have one company, interior warehousing, logistics. Interesting to us because I bought it about 5, 6 years ago, and because I believed already for 20 years that it had potential. I did a business plan for my companies when I was in 1974, before I started even the company, that still today, if you looked at it, I'm still following the same business plan, virtually. And all of those things are important.
Wow.
And those are some of the things that I see in you.
Thank you.
So then it becomes a question of, okay, let's talk about your second project, because again, I thought that was so unique because you were awarded the business person of the province.
Well, I was nominated. I didn't make top 5, but a nomination was still huge for me.
Huge.
Yeah, we hadn't even been operating for a full year yet, and the amount of support and just even, it was overwhelmingly like...
So how did you get into being even nominated? Did people select you and put your plan forward?
Yeah, so the company that I was nominated for is my second business, Worth a Shot, mobile bartending. I always just shorten it a little bit. And community members were able to openly nominate. It was a platform where anyone was able to put forward nominations, and I got an email saying that I was nominated and prompted me to go and kind of answer a couple questions that were visible to everyone in the province to kind of get a little bit more information about the business. And then for I think almost a month, the voting was open to the public and people were able to vote for businesses all across BC. I think that there was like over 73,000 votes cast in 80 something communities within the province. So it was very widely received, and it was a great opportunity to be a part of it.
To be nominated alone is already amazing, because you have only been in that particular business for how long?
At that point, it was just over a year of having the business registered, not even operating for that long yet.
So, I know what it is, so we're going to find out together with our friends from around the world to find out what it was that we were nominated for, where the idea came from. So I'm going to probe you a little bit on that. It's saying, okay, so Interesting, Kyndra. So I'm looking at your bio and saying, I've not seen that before. What did she do? She found something there. What creates the opportunity for a business is that you have to find something that is somewhat unique and different.
Yeah.
And then you have to have some kind of a business idea about the viability of it. Then you have to then create a number of things as to, okay, so where would people need this service and why? And is the continuity, and how much infrastructure is involved? How much does it cost to get it off the ground? All those kind of things.
Yeah.
My problem was always, I had all the ideas, but a lot of times what I wanted to get off the ground cost a lot of money, and the banks don't want to give me any money.
Yeah.
You know, because they said, once you have money, we'll give you money. If you don't have any money, we don't want to give you any.
Yeah.
You know, so more or less, right? So unless you kind of then gather together as much of the finances as you can to get the idea off the ground, test it, and then prove that it works. Now, yours was an idea, and saying that, how did she get the idea? Well, it created a portable bar that you could take to different venues. How did she come up with it? Maybe, I'm just hypothetically, correct me if I'm wrong, because you're planning at some point you're going to get married. And then one of those things involves that, okay, where do we get married? Well, let's do it at location X. Well, that's all good and well. Then how about that part as the bar service and all the, okay, that's where the business opportunity maybe is, because we've been to many weddings or many other situations and there is no bar, and all of a sudden, click, opportunity. Am I close?
You're close. Yeah, that's really almost nail on the head. We got engaged, and I was looking into bars and what kind of venue has what and whatnot, and I knew that I wanted to get married in Fraser Lake, and I knew
your
that
hometown.
I knew that I had to get venues not venues, but all of our vendors to go out to Fraser Lake essentially. And that was fine for the most part. Catering was not an issue, decor, whatnot. But then finding a bartending service that can come to us, and it was non-existent. So I thought, okay, well, with my business background, you find a gap in the market, you fill the gap.
Correct.
Yeah. And so I got really interested in it and made my business plan in like 3 or 4 days, like this big stack of paper, and kind of went over all of my kind of strategies and what my goals were, and then
all the checkoffs.
The whole 9 yards. And then I went and bought a trailer, and having my fiancé know how to weld was very helpful and saved a lot of money. So didn't take very long, and we had converted a cargo trailer into a full service mobile bartending unit that can go anywhere for anything.
Yeah. And all of a sudden they have a business. Does it have a name?
Yep, Worth a Shot Mobile Bar.
It is what?
Worth a Shot.
Worth a thought.
Yeah, I like puns, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was fun.
And mobile bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is there a website?
Yeah, we have our website, and we have all of our social media where we try to be pretty active on everything. So. Yeah.
So when did you start that, Kyndra?
Well, building the trailer started last January.
Right.
So it's just.
What's your fiancé's name?
Matt.
Matt?
Yeah.
Okay.
Matt Price.
Yeah. So okay. So and. You just, I interrupted you. I just want to know his name.
Yeah, Matt. And so basically I didn't want to rush into anything, and I wasn't sure if it would even be popular in the community, if they would take to it. So I started doing a couple private events for family and friends, and then in August.
Went well.
Yeah. Oh, they went great. And then I was more comfortable with it, and I thought, okay, well, might as well open it up to the public.
Yeah.
And then we had launched on Facebook, And within 3 days on social media, we had over 20,000 interactions with the site.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had a booking every single weekend. This was the first weekend, or the first week of August was when I launched.
Wow.
And then every single weekend from that weekend forward, all the way up to October, I had a booking.
So you have to get a permit for that then?
It's highly dependent on where the venue is and
Right.
if you're doing it at a private residence or if it's more community,
Right.
like public.
Right.
So it's case by case, but
Yeah.
some you have to get permits, others it's not required.
But you got that all pretty much under control.
Yeah, we have done enough events now to really understand the regulations and work with them.
Is there anybody else doing that anywhere?
I think that there's another mobile company in town that will go and do events, but in northern BC, we're actually the only mobile bartending trailer unit.
Yeah.
So our trailer has got a 2-tap kegerator so people can have draft beer. We have refrigeration units so we keep everything cold, and then we have our industrial slush machine, so lots of bellinis, and kids really love it too. We don't make it alcoholic at first. So.
It's a good thing that you got Matt, right? Because he complements your
Yes.
knowledge together with his of getting things done.
Absolutely. Yeah, we work together as a team very well, and that's largely been why we've been so successful with each other.
Yeah. And so you have one trailer now.
Yeah. Eventually, I'm hoping we'll have a couple, but we actually do a lot more than just the bartending trailer as well now. We've kind of expanded our services into a couple different things. Originally, it was just bartending, and we did it with the trailer, and then if the venues didn't have space or people wanted us to just bartend and have, they don't need the trailer there, then we were doing that stuff as well. But we found that people had so many questions about, how do you do this? And who do we book for that? I got the staff, we're all certified wedding and event coordinators as well now.
Okay.
So
What does that mean, certified?
It means we've got our qualifications, we've done training and have passed courses.
Where do you do the training for anything like that?
There's online courses that you can take.
Okay, good.
And the one that we did is actually Ontario based, so it's a Canadian company that worked with us to get our certificates.
So you have to do a lot of research as well, right? So that
and then basically learning how to work with different cultures with their weddings and stuff like that. There's a lot of specific things that each culture has and needs for their events, and then the business side of it when we do corporate events, and we work with the First Nations quite a bit. We're actually working with the evacuee out of just past Fort St. James. We're doing their wellness retreat. It's a week-long summer event this year, and that's one of our big projects. So between that, our bartending side of it and our event coordination, those are our two main services.
Yeah.
And then we actually also recently introduced rental equipment as well. So specifically bar-related stuff. So we've got our kegerator like setup, like our bar stations that are portable, as well as champagne walls, cigar and whiskey carts, tons of yard games and stuff to make it more fun.
So are you close to managing a whole situation like that? So we want to do this, and we will have about 250 people there. Organize it for me.
We have no problem organizing it. I don't think we'll ever want to cover the catering and then all of the other aspects that come along with it, like the photography and stuff.
Right.
But I think where we're at right now is a really good place to be in terms of service offerings.
Right.
And I don't think we'll expand beyond that very much.
No, you have to find the right model, right? So you don't get buried in a whole lot of stuff that you don't want to be in. But your strength lies in being able to organize it.
Yes.
Right? And let others do the actual hand-on stuff. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So at 24, and obviously Matt is a big help to you, and then still doing your studying and doing the mill services, you guys got your plate full.
Well, yeah, but that's just the two businesses. I still also work full time, and then I've got a bunch of projects that I do on the side as well.
And work full time means what?
I work full time for Sinclair Group.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm in their sales and logistics department.
In their logistic department?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you work in town then here?
Yep, I work over on 15th and Nicholson. They're
Oh,
building
that's
there.
where their office is, yeah.
Yeah, so that's where I am.
Yeah.
Most days.
Yeah. Amazing. And then and then you do other projects, which are like.
Well, I'm actually working with the university right now to develop an app for volunteerism in the community. So it would essentially, it's kind of on a standstill right now because we were going to be, it was going to be a course offering at the university that has been postponed till the fall.
Okay.
But essentially what's going to happen is tech students, computer science students, will be working with business students to bring an app to life that a business student has developed in a business plan. And so I've been working on that for the last year or so to bring that to those computer sciences to work on the coding and then to have it develop to a point where it may be not finished, but 4 months in and the course is finished now and we have something we can take to a developer that can finish it and it won't be full cost.
Right.
Yeah, and then so that's one of the bigger projects that I've been a part of. And that kind of stemmed from my work with the Herrendorf family, where they're a scholarship provider that have been funding most of my schooling.
Okay.
And they had given me an opportunity to do a fellowship last summer.
Okay.
And so for 8 weeks in the summer, I got to do my own research on Fraser Lake about bridging the resource gap between access to resources in rural communities. And after I completed all of that research, I really wanted to further along that because that's been my career aspirations even when I got into things in the beginning. When I first started going to school, my original plan was to bring resources to communities like Fraser Lake and smaller areas in the
north. If you talk about bring resources to Fraser Lake, what do you visualize?
Just
as resources?
Well, I mean, growing up, it was really obvious from a young age seeing the lack of opportunities in the community and just even access to education for students and access to technology and things like that. And it puts students and people in the community at such a disadvantage.
Yeah.
And being in the north, it's so far and spread out that it's hard for those kids to have those same opportunities.
Exactly.
And so I wanted to try to do my part in making it so that it was easier for kids to have those access to resources.
Does CNC have a location in Fraser Lake?
No, I think the closest one is Vanderhoof, and then there's one in Burns Lake as well, but nothing directly in Fraser Lake.
So I believed, for a long time, and that's kind of comes down to the John A. Brink Trades and Technology Center. I always believed that only was step one.
Yeah.
I think we have to go far beyond that. That if we want to attract investment in the amazing resources that we have in northern British Columbia, then we have to go much further. And I've been, with all due respect, with my peers in the forest industry, I do quite a few presentations in different locations. I did a presentation a couple of months ago at BCIT, and my God, that place is big. I'm in BCIT, and I said, where do I go now? Oh my God, they have something like 40,000 students, or God knows what.
Wow.
Then also, latter part of last year, but it was announced that BCIT is doing a fairly major expansion in jobs relating to the resource industry and spending about $270 million. The three major companies, West Fraser, Canfor, I think Interfor, of Western, together donated between themselves $2.7 million. Oh, it's amazing. That's good. I like that idea, but I was critical of it in a way, is that I believe that factually 75 or 80% of the GDP, the gross domestic product of the province, is generated in northern BC. Proportionally, we're not investing enough here, and to support attracting more investments and supporting institutions like CNC, the University of Northern British Columbia, and I've been a proponent after supporting substantially the John A. Brink Trades and Technology Center, is in the center of excellence, I call it. Something, a smaller version, if you wish, of BCIT in Northern British Columbia. I don't see why we have to invest $270 million, all due respect to BCIT, fabulous organization. We should be spending it here because the benefits of it are obvious at UNBC. Most of the people that we have in Northern British Columbia here, even I was sitting at a boardroom table for one of our companies, and around the table we had about 6 people. All of those people studied at UNBC or got a degree from UNBC, including me. I got honorary doctorates of laws from the University of Northern British Columbia. The point that I'm making is that, but the people down south, and I usually look over my shoulder and say, don't forget it, 80% of the GDP comes from here. Let's make sure we invest in the center of excellence, because that's still is the deterrent today to attract capital and further manufacturing in Northern British Columbia. To find investment, it's not all the other things that I said earlier that we already have, but we do not have sufficient amount of access to a skilled workforce. Without a skilled workforce, you cannot invest tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure. It has been a problem for the last 60 years that I've been here and beyond, and still has been a problem daily in our companies, and still is a problem today. And I think that's why I so strongly believe, and that's where we have to invest. That would help communities like Fraser Lake. And if I look around the province now, with all the problems we have had in the forest industry, still have today. We've lost probably 45 sawmills, and partially because of a reduction in the annual allowable cut. We have lost pulp mills. We have lost pellet plants. We have lost value-added manufacturing. Just recently, we had to pause or temporarily close, hopefully temporary, an operation in Houston, BC, that for our benefit of the people watching internationally, that's about 4 hours west of Prince George. Small community, is slightly bigger than Fraser Lake, but similar in structure. They have lost a couple of sawmills. We temporarily closed our sawmill there in the last week. That lost that community 75 direct jobs. For every direct job, that's how the math works. For every direct job, you lose another 2 indirect. That is 225 jobs lost. That may not come back. Was there a need for it? No, there wasn't. And what did the government say about it? And I'm being somewhat critical here. No, they didn't say anything about it. And that is one of the challenges that we have. That there you find entrepreneurship. The company that I'm talking about, Pleasant Valley Remanufacturing, had been in business for 40 years in Houston. I bought it 20 years ago and intended to double it in size. Fiber was available in the region. We were committed to double the size until we have no fiber. And then even the provincial government and the regional government and the local government are all being not proactive, in terms of trying to protect the investment because they're worried about bigger companies and all of that kind of stuff. And basically, there has been no reaction. And it is so critically important for communities like, if I look in northern BC now, and I really get upset about it, and I'm very vocal about it, is that with the changes in the forest industry, I look at Fort Nelson, Chetwynd, Fort St. John, Mackenzie, Prince George, Vanderhoof, Fraser Lake, Houston, Burns Lake, Smithers. We have lost so many jobs, not for lack of resources, but simply because of lack of a coherent strategy by government, not beating up on the NDP government. The BC Liberals at the time are now called the United BC or whatever they are called, have the same issues. I'm also being critical of communities that are not speaking up loudly in terms of saying, this is not for one company, but this is what we want, like what you were saying about it, your concerns about Fraser Lake and what can be there and what can we do to give people comfort in terms of jobs that may be available. But the other part about it that a lot of people forget about, like in communities like Fraser Lake, and there were two companies like that. It's not only Brink and the Pleasant Valley Remanufacturing. There's another company next door. I don't speak for them, but they employ about the same amount of people. You can pretty much say 400 to 500 jobs were lost in a community like your size.
Yeah, that's huge. That makes such a difference. And I was a part of that when they did the shift cut in Fraser Lake. I worked at West Fraser. I was on one of the operating shifts, and they cut 80 people. Yeah. And 80 people, it's one of the biggest employers in the community, and I think at the time was employing about 300. So 80 people from that's
nearly 30%.
It's a
one third of nearly. And those are direct jobs.
Yeah.
Kyndra, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
For every job, that is a multiplier of 2. And the sensitivity to it, is to me unacceptable. And I've been very vocal about it. I am, on my podcasting, I do podcasting on different topics, including yours, obviously, and entrepreneurship. It's always interesting to talk about because I didn't know some of the things that you had, and I think it's an inspiration for others. But I also do sometimes podcasting is that BC forest industry in transition, and saying the resource is unique in the province of British Columbia because it belongs to you and me, the people. Access to timber is a privilege. It's not owned by anybody, and then it also means that with it goes social obligations in terms of sensitivity to the region. That the more further manufacturing we can do in the region, the better it is for the community. And it deals with the concept of regional manufacturing. And and where we are now with our current government, but also it's not unique to them. It's also with the ones before them, it's the BC Liberals or that I don't think there's enough sensitivity to further manufacturing. Brink, I'm not blowing the horn on my company. We have been in business for 50 years. I started it with nothing, worked my ass off, really, as long as I could stay awake, build it up from nothing, never got a nickel from government, doesn't want anything. We didn't cut a single tree. We just secondary manufacturers, employed close to 400 people, and then bought the plant in Vanderhoof Specialty Wood in 2000, in about 6-7 years ago, 5-6 years ago, and then bought Pleasant Valley Remanufacturing in 2003 and want to double in size. I had a plan to do CLT, cross-laminated timber, and all kinds of new approaches to value-added manufacturing. was planning to spend $50 million in a plant. I canceled it last week. We're not going to do it anymore because we don't even have government pick up the phone and say, not for, hey, John, poor John, not about me. It's about my employees, people that have worked for us for all these years. What am I going to tell them?
Yeah.
That government is not even bothering. They're so busy with the big guys and all those other things. How about the people that lost their jobs? How about what is important to them? What about their houses? All of a sudden, the value of the market, and so those are the things that really, really, really trouble me, and it bothers me that from a local, regional, provincial level, it appears to me, and I hate to say this because I would hope that is not the case, but either they are totally, totally incompetent or they don't care. Because that anytime there is a pulp mill that shuts down on the island and Paper Excellence, the company from China, that that's buying up all these assets, they okay, how much money do you want? And I'm not looking for money. I'm simply looking for how about these communities in northern British Columbia? And I really get carried away about this. So anyway, but this is all recent stuff that is happening.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's where I believe that and I like it hear you talking about the importance of communities, because it is so critically important that they are a lot of times single industries. Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of times forest industry. Yeah. In a lot of cases with the forest industry, it is so consolidated by 2 or 3 companies that own it all, that have, they believe, the timber rights, and that have decided no longer to invest in BC, and they're investing in other places, maybe the U.S. Southeast or elsewhere, but you still control all the timber. Yeah. And but anyway, I'm fairly vocal about that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, where do you go from here? With because a lot of stuff is happening for you in terms of your career, exciting things you do in terms of entrepreneurship. It's being an entrepreneur usually means to me having good foresight in terms of what will things look like 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now?
It's a good question. I think there's a lot of career left for me to explore, like being so young and already having the opportunity to do these things that I've done and already have these accomplishments under my belt. It's a good start and a solid foundation. Yeah. And so I do think that long term, my intention is just to continue to persevere and keep adjusting to the market and really just finding those opportunities to continue to find new areas to service and to make those resources accessible. I mean, both of the companies that we currently have running, my whole goal behind it is and has been and will continue to be bringing employment into the community and having those opportunities. And with the staff that we have with True North, it's great. We've got a lot of guys. Even in the last 6 months where we've been working kind of more consistently and being bigger in the community is worth a shot. I've brought on 3 staff, and then I've just hired 3 more recently for the summer. So having 6 jobs, it doesn't sound like a lot, and it's not a crazy amount for Prince George, but I mean 6 jobs in Fraser Lake or 6 jobs in those smaller communities, like that's a lot of people, right? So
entrepreneurship is an asset to the community.
Absolutely.
That you have people thinking forward and thinking entrepreneurial. That's what builds it. Yeah. It's not somebody coming in from the outside and laying down billions of dollars to pay for something that is already operating. It's the ones that pull it physically out of the ground, like I did with my company. I had nothing. pull it out of the ground. I was your age when I came off the bus here. With my $25.47, attitude, passion, work ethic, and I was going to build a mill. But nobody is going to stop me. So I say, have a dream, follow your dream, never, ever, ever give up, and stay the course. Sometimes you have to go sideways a little bit along the way. But the other part that is important for me is that there is no place, and I've been all around the world, there is no place anywhere near close to what Canada is. And there is no place better in Canada than BC, and there's no place better and has more opportunities than Northern BC. We could not be luckier, and especially if you look around, the world there, and may it be in Asia, may it be in Arabia, in some areas there, Africa, or in Central Europe and the Ukraine and Russia, that how fortunate we are, right? And and so that's kind of the way I look at it, and and wherever the opportunity presents itself, that's why I write my books, and that's why I'm a strong believer that I speak to the issues and the topics. Sometimes I'm controversial, but there is going through the hard way, Kyndra, as you have, as I'm doing, and as you still at the beginning, and I hope I'm not at the end. I got still a lot more books to write, but to kind of look back is to have the opportunity to be here at this location in the world. I could not have been better anywhere. All the opportunities are here. Yeah. No question about that.
Oh, I totally agree. I think that being from Fraser Lake and having the same kind of things going on there where it's the access, and I mean, even when I had originally decided to come back to school, it was after the forest fires in Fraser Lake and the Shovel Lake fire in 2018. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do prior to that, and then the forest fire happened, and I knew that it was that point where I wanted to start to do something to make a difference.
Right.
And the whole experience of being an evacuee for a couple of weeks and seeing what was happening to the people in my community and my family, and just that uncertainty of the whole situation was very troublesome. And I would say that, it's not easy to be a part of those kind of situations. No. And there's a lot of adversity and challenges that come from that, but it's those kind of issues that really define people and help them to find their path. And I've definitely found that through that. And it's actually the more recent project that I haven't mentioned yet. It's called the Fraser Lake Eco Cooperative project.
Right.
I sit on the board as the vice president for that organization, and it's a community renewal project in Fraser Lake that's been a startup for the last several years. And we're basically just working to bring, again, resources into the community with a commercial kitchen and a couple of different artisan shops, and incorporating the First
So what
Nation.
does the group look like?
Well, we're still very much in the kind of initial phase of developing. We've been working with UNBC, UBC, UVic, SFU.
So you have meetings together?
Yeah, well, our board, we work together and try to get funding. And it was actually recently, there was the founder is my mother, Shelley Gleave, and she actually recently was in Total Mom Pitch. It's a Canada-wide entrepreneurial mothers organization, I suppose to call it, and she was nominated, or she got into it and ended up being in the top 100 with the Eco Co-op. And so she has been doing crazy.
What's her name?
Shelley Gleave.
Okay.
Yeah, and she's been doing incredible things with that. And I've got to be on the board for the last 2 years, I think, now. Okay. And that's one of the really big projects that I'm really looking forward to continuing to work on. I think you mentioned my long-term goals for the next couple of years, and if that facility can be built in the next 5-10 years, I think that would be, that's a huge goal of mine and my mother's, and I guess the rest of the board as well, to have that vision brought to life and the opportunities in the community that would bring
Right.
just incredible. Yeah, really great things.
Yeah. So if there's any time an opportunity to make a presentation from an old guy that done some of this stuff, I've done several of those. I did them in west of in the Smithers area, and Tekla in particular, and some of the other places, and do some more, I guess, in the next month or so. And I love to talk to the smaller communities and about opportunities that are, in my opinion, available, and to share with them some of the challenges and along the way.
Yeah, I'm sure that the communities would love to participate in something like
So maybe check it out. Let me know.
Yeah.
The other thing that I was going to mention to you, and that you're a very good presenter as well. You have confidence. You come across well. I didn't do that. I had to go to Toastmasters. I had severe difficulty in communicating right up the time that I was 50, and then I was in Toastmasters for 10 years. They had to virtually drag me down there initially, because there's nothing more fearful than being a public speaker, as they say a lot of times. I was the worst example of that, and then became a distinguished Toastmaster, which is the highest level. Less than 1% of Toastmasters ever get to that level or want to go to that level, and it changed my life. So I do a lot of presenting. I'm a professional speaker, and the other thing that I do, something that you will find unique in listening to you, is that every November the 11th, that week, I usually talk to as many as 4 schools in the province. Last year I did 2 in Surrey, White Rock, and then 2 here in Prince George, about what it really means, 2 minutes of silence. Very important, right? So, and it's always important for me to still talk about that, because there are not many people that were there at the time, and I think that's very important.
Yes.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the 2 books here. I signed both of them, and the other one, very appropriate for you, your topics that I'm trying to write about, is that finding your passion, living the dream, and and that will come out in July. I'll get you a copy of those 2.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Kyndra. And any other last thoughts that you may have along the way, or?
I think that for the most part we've covered everything. I think it's a lot to talk about in a short amount of time, but I've been really appreciative of you having me here.
Well, and a real pleasure having you.
Yes, great.
Thanks, Kyndra. Appreciate it.
Thanks.